Unit 6, Lesson 2, Video 2. So let's focus on our first area of focus, the fundamental accounting principle. And we're going to focus on two scenarios. As we mentioned before, this deals with multiplication and when you multiply numbers, whether the events at each stage are independent or dependent makes a difference upon what number is going to come next in your multiplication process. So a little review and preview of these two topics, because you get these later, and that's that events are independent if one event does not affect the other, or dependent where one event does affect the outcome of another. So let's compare these two. Now, all these that I'm going to discuss here are considered fundamental accounting principle questions. So the first one we have as an example is the Palace of Pizza offers small, medium, or large pizzas with 14 different toppings available. How many different one-topping pizzas do they serve? Now, if you look at the reference sheet, I replaced that here. Okay, so these are the same things that you find on your reference sheet. It says that basically the fundamental accounting principle can be used to calculate how many outcomes are possible given how many options are available at each stage. Now that's the key here, because if you look at this question, there's basically two things you have to choose from as a customer. One is you have the size of the pizza, small, medium, or large. And then you have the toppings, and you have 14 of them. Now they're asking for one-topping pizzas, so if you look at the definition of fundamental accounting principle, the size would be considered stage 1, and the toppings would be considered stage 2. Now again, notice, just because I pick a medium, it does not change what topping I would have. Okay, so that means they are independent events. So you would have 3 choices on the first stage and 14 on the next, and based on this little rule right here, which we'll go into greater detail if you want to on how to solve, then that would be just the product of those two numbers. But again, we know it's a fundamental accounting principle because they want to know how many different one-topping pizzas there are. They're not asking for a probability. Second one, same thing. We have 4 letters to choose from, and we want to make a 4-letter password, and they can be repeated. Now again, I can repeat a letter more than once, so therefore they're independent events, whereas if I couldn't do that, if I chose A, or if I had A as my first letter, I couldn't use that letter again. So that would affect my next choice. So again, this is still counting principle because you're saying how many letters do we have to choose from, and at each stage, since you can repeat, you would have basically 4 stages, and at each stage you would have 4 letters to choose from. So again, the how-to video will explain how to do this one to calculate it, but I know it is a fundamental accounting principle because it says how many passwords are possible. It doesn't ask for probability. And the next one says Alan is playing a role of Oliver in his school production of Oliver Twist. The wardrobe crew has presented 5 pairs of pants and 14 shirts that he can wear. How many possible outcomes, or how many possible costumes consisting of a pair of pants and a shirt can he create? Again, how many? Alright, now if you have dependent events, as I mentioned before, you have a scenario that we will cover now in our next video. So this ends video 2, lesson 1, unit 6.